All right, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the brick itself. We need the ability to destroy them. We need the ability to gain some points, and that will allow us to win the game. So in order to put those pieces together, let's go over to our brick script. So double click that. And over here in our brick, we're going to have several different items that will be tunable, tweakable over in the inspector, and then we'll have some information that's kept private to this class itself. So right up here at the top, inside our brick class, we need our fields section. And the first item, these integers are going to be exposed to the inspector. And so when you're using the serialize field to expose variables to the inspector, if they're the same type, then you can actually use the comma instead of semicolon to make them all on multiple lines, because serialize field only applies to the first line that it encounters. So we can link these items together using the comma and not have to duplicate a bunch of extra code. So we're dealing with three integers. The first will be the number of points that you get when you collide with the brick. Your ball hits the brick, you get a certain number of points. The next item, the next integer, will be the number of points you get if you destroy the brick. If you've hit it enough times that you've broken its shields and taken away all of its life, and you've actually destroyed it. The third integer will be the maximum number of hits that it takes to actually destroy the brick. Now, as far as private information is concerned, we need to track how many hits this brick has taken. We also need information about colliding with the brick. If we can't collide with it, the ball can't hit it, then we can't actually do the collision to count up the number of points. We can't count up the number of bricks, and we can't decrement the number of bricks when you actually destroy them. So we need to have a little bit of information regarding the collision that's available on the object that this script is attached to. And then finally, one property will be able to share that brick count. And because it's going to be static, it will move from an instance level, right, from brick to brick to brick, up to the high level brick class itself. So we can ask anywhere, hey brick, just in general like a nebulous concept, the high level template class, hey brick, how many bricks are out there in the scene? And it will be able to tell us that, because count will be a shared value that every brick that gets created can add to, and when they get destroyed, they can subtract from. So here underneath our serialized field, we need an int, and the first item will be points on collision. And I want to default that to 1. So set that equal to 1, comma. The next item is going to be my points when I actually destroy the brick. So this is going to be points on destroy. And I also want to set that equal to 1. This is why we get 2 points when we destroy a one hit brick, comma. And then the maximum number of hits that I have to hit this brick however many times in order to destroy it. So that's max hits. We'll set that equal to 1, and that will end this statement. So let's go ahead and semicolon. Now, as far as kind of behind the scenes internal information, we need another integer for the hits taken, and we can default that to 0. And I said we want to look at the object and say whether or not we can actually hit it, because if you can't hit it, then you shouldn't be adding it to something that to a concept of something that could be hit. It's just not possible. So it doesn't matter if you're talking to a box collider, like a cube, a sphere collider, a capsule collider, a mesh collider. It does not matter what collider type you're talking to, because every one of those things, very similar to what we saw in our brick, how we inherit functionality from the mono behavior, and it inherits more functionality from its parent. Basically, imagine this is box collider or sphere collider or capsule collider. The parent of all of those items is collider. So we can ask this object, if it's a cube, a capsule, a mesh, a sphere, it doesn't matter. We can ask it if it has a collider, and the system, C#, is smart enough to understand, right, you are a descendant of collider, therefore, yes, you do have a collider. So right after our hit's taken, let's go ahead and put in a collider, and I'm going to call mine col. And then right after that section, we need a properties section. And the one and only property shared amongst the bricks, it's going to be public, so it can be seen by the outside world. Static, so it can be shared across all the bricks. Int, we're counting up integers, whole numbers. It's going to be called count. I'm using capital C because this is Pascal case, it's public. And now I need a getter, so get semicolon, and a setter, set semicolon, inside the curly brackets for the body. Now, in order to count up the count variable, the property, we need to look at whether or not we have a collider. If we do, we can go ahead and increase this. If we don't, we should probably warn that you just applied a brick to something that can't be interacted with. Therefore, we won't count it, and we'll, again, issue you a warning. You need to go fix this. Put the script on something you can actually collide with. So here inside start, I want to go through and say col equals, because we're going to fill in the collider with the collider that's on this object. And we need to get component, and inside the diamond, we're looking for a collider. And close it off, give it parentheses, and give it a semicolon. Drop down a couple of lines. So now, if there was a collider, then col will be filled with something. If there wasn't, it will be null. Very similar to the brick and the ball and all that stuff. When we looked for the object, it either existed or it didn't. So we can now ask the question, if col, and then do something, whether or not we see a collider or we don't see a collider. So if we do see a collider and we're starting up, this would be a great opportunity to increase the number of bricks that are counted. So count plus plus, semicolon. And the thing is, if we just increase the count, this would be a good spot to also update the UI. So your bricks in the upper right corner should increase as the scene is loading up. So it actually loads up so quickly you'll see the final count, but as it's tallying up, it will, as each brick comes online, it will count up by 1 and refresh itself. So the thing is, though, that method doesn't yet exist in order to tell the game manager to update its scoring logic. It's also got to bind to the UI, so that's a whole other set of features we'll get to very shortly. But since it doesn't exist, we can use our handy-dandy to-do, colon, and this is a fix me later kind of scenario. And what are we looking to fix? Well, that's a call to the game manager dot instance and to a method that doesn't yet exist. So show brick count, parentheses, semicolon. And since it doesn't exist, I'm going to just comment it out right there at the very beginning. But if start got called and col was null, then we need to issue some kind of an error out to the player, or rather the developer, because the player shouldn't see this. The developer should see this as an issue that they need to go fix. So inside this else, if the if was false, in the else we can say debug.log warning, and we're going to send it the message telling us where the issue was. So right now we're inside the brick class, so brick. We're inside the start method, so start. And then we can throw a hyphen on there and say what the actual issue is. In this case, it's that a collider wasn't found. So collider not found. So now that we've got the ability to count the object up, we should also have the ability to count the object down when we destroy it. We've hit it enough times, it goes away. So we actually do not need any part of update, including the comment. So you can select all of that and just delete. But what we do need to do is tie into a message that Unity sends when an object is being destroyed. And that is on destroy. And again, because it's part of the system, we get private and then all the rest. So here inside on destroy, it's a safe bet that we still have our collider from earlier, but it's also possible that the designer, the developer, wasn't paying attention to this warning. So maybe it's a good idea to leave it there, serve the same purpose, print out the same thing. So in this case, since I'm going to do something very similar to this if col counted up, show the brick count, and then warn if we don't have it, I'm going to just select those lines, right click, copy, and come down here to destroy and paste. But now I've got to clean some stuff up. I need to, number one, if we're destroying the bricks, we need to decrement. So let's go with, instead of plus plus, how about minus minus? The show brick count is still the same. It's still commented out until we fix it later. But down here, our warning is no longer emanating from inside brick start. It's coming from brick on destroy, and collider was not found. Now, the thing is, though, if you are destroying bricks and you've just destroyed the last one, that count will minus minus to go from 1 down to 0, meaning that you've won. So we need to, right after that else, ask the question if count has dropped below or equal to, if it's less than or equal to 0, then we need to say, hey, game manager, dot instance, win, a method that doesn't yet exist. So I'm going to comment that line out, and on the line just above it, I'm going to add our to do. Fix this later. Now, this is fine and all, except there's a little kind of bug caveat, if you want to call it that. If you're playing in an application, right, you've made a build, you're playing, and you start to shut down a level, then you're, or rather, not necessarily the level specifically, but if you're shutting down the application, then the application is gone. It kind of restores itself when it comes back, but all of your systems are basically shut down, the code's purged from RAM, etc. But if you're here inside the Unity editor, when you stop playing, all of your objects also happen to get on destroy called on them. And so as a result, if you're not paying close attention, the bricks, as they are, if you lose, for example, your ball hit the floor and you still had bricks outstanding in your level, as it's closing down, as that level is closing down to send you to end, those bricks, when they get destroyed by the engine, they call on destroy right here, which causes a check of whether or not the count drops to or below 0. Every single brick that gets destroyed does that. And so if you're transitioning to end and you've just destroyed the last brick, that code right there, line 46, will be called. It will see that, oh yeah, you just destroyed the last brick, and line 49 would be called. You just won. Well, no, you didn't. You lost. So, or you were shutting down the editor, so you didn't technically win. So there should be no reason to load up another scene. And it turns out in the editor, if you try loading a scene as you're shutting down, it can make the hierarchy act really weird. So what we want to do is, there's a couple of ways to get to on destroy. If you've hit the floor, you've lost, and you're transitioning over to end. Every one of the bricks here gets destroyed as part of that transition. Or if you're shutting down the editor, right? You're stopping playing. You press the play button, you stop the editor, and now all of your bricks are shutting down. They get this on destroy called, and then it says, oh no, you won, and it moves you elsewhere. So what we need to do is ask the question, well, number one, if you lose, then you've lost. It shouldn't do this check. If you win, there are no more remaining bricks, so there is no counting necessary at all. And if the editor is shutting down, then you also could technically be considered losing, so we just wouldn't do this check as well. So in order to perform this check properly, here at the bottom, instead of only checking for whether or not the count dropped below 0, we also want to listen for whether or not the application is shutting down. And if the application is shutting down, at least from the editor standpoint, then we don't want to do this extra check right here. Again, if it's on a device or an actual build, this code wouldn't matter at all. This is only a caveat because we're using on destroy in conjunction with a brick count check and from the editor itself. So in order to compensate for all this stuff, if we go back over to the game manager, what we need to do is right up here at the top where we have our properties, we need to make one more property that's going to listen for a very specific event that the engine, Unity, will tell us is happening. And then we need to remember that. So right up here in our properties, if we drop down one, we need a public bool called app is quitting. And just like the singleton instance, we can have a getter for the outside world, but we want a private setter for this file and this file only. Now, we'll come back around to the win-lose logic. We'll also come back around to resetting this variable when we actually load into a new scene so that everything is basically, well, reset, so you're not dealing with any artifacts. But what we want to do in order to track this information, in order to set this variable, this property correctly, is scroll all the way to the bottom of the game manager, right after quit game, and we're going to create another one of those screaming cap section, kind of like what we have here with our scene manager. This section is going to be called app management. And you'll find, in addition to those other ons, like on trigger, on collision, Unity also provides us several other bits of information. So if I start typing in on, there's a bunch of items in there. And you can scroll through and take a look. But I know I'm wanting to talk to the application. So on application. And you'll notice I've got 3 items. Focus, that's if we change, like we jumped out to the home screen, or we changed to a background task or a foreground task. Pause. Some of these messages you can get, for example, if you're on a mobile device, if you receive a call and your game has to stop and you have to take the call. So when it comes back, it can resume. But in this case, the very last item, on application quit, that's the one that's going to tell me whether or not we're stopping the editor or if the application is actually quitting because it's on a device or whatever. So on application quit is called automatically by the engine, and this is where I want to set app is quitting equal to true. So if we're quitting, then our brick should not do this win logic, because all the bricks will have been destroyed and it would automatically go to win, and that would cause a problem with our hierarchy. So what I want to do is, in addition to the count is less than or equal to 0, I want to ask one more question. And both of these sides have to be true in order to call win. Number 1, did you destroy all the bricks? Is count less than or equal to 0? And, double ampersand, logical or conditional and are we not application is quitting? And that lives inside the game manager.instance.app is quitting. So if we are not quitting and we've destroyed everything, then we win. Okay, so let's go ahead and save both of those files. So Control-Shift-S. And so now that we have the potential to win if we're not quitting and we've destroyed all the bricks, now we need the ability to actually trigger the destruction of a brick based on the fact that we've hit it enough times. Now this is over in ball, down at the bottom. When we find out we're talking to a brick, we call hit taken. So this is the code that we're going to flesh out right now. So back over here in brick, right after on destroy, we need a public method, because again you just saw it called by ball. So public void hit taken, doesn't take anything in, doesn't return anything, and all it's going to do is increment this hits taken variable up at the top. So hits taken plus plus. Well, if you just took a hit, then you just earned some points on collision. So in order to handle both the points being awarded and also updating the score UI in the upper left corner, we want to create a method in the very near future over in the game manager, because again the game manager is responsible for score as well as UI. So game manager dot instance dot, and again doesn't yet exist, but it's going to be called modify and show score, and it's going to take in how many points it is going to be awarding when you collide. And we already established that the points that you get when you collide are right here, points on collision. So if we go back down to the bottom, inside those parentheses, points on collision. Close that method. Make sure you only have the one parenthesis and semicolon. But because this doesn't exist, I'm going to go to the very beginning, 2 forward slashes, go just above it, and 2 forward slashes to do colon fix this later. Now, this is just randomly hitting a brick, but if you struck it enough times to actually destroy it, then you want to get those points for destroying it, points on destroy, and you also want to destroy it. So right after those commented out lines, let's ask the question if you've hit this brick enough times to actually destroy it. So if hits taken is greater than or equal to max hits. Have you hit it exactly or more than enough times to actually destroy it? And give that a body. Now, since we're awarding more points, but this time it's points on destroy, we can actually pluck out the first 2 lines of this comment. Number 1, we need to disable it until we fix it later. And 2, it's the game manager instance modify and show score, but with a different points value. So let's go ahead and have those highlighted, Control C, down here, Control V. And inside the missing parenthesis area here, let's go ahead and say points on destroy, and then wrap it up and semicolon. And after you've awarded those points, now you should execute a destroy call. So destroy, and who are we destroying? Well, that's this game object that we're attached to. And save. Okay. So with that, that's everything in this file save for these to-do fix me's that are commented out that we will get to very shortly. So now we have a number of final systems over in the game manager that need to be fleshed out. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, and when we come back, we'll continue building the game manager's missing pieces to link all those other files together.